Now we're going to talk about factoring trinomials, but we're going to start with the easy case first. So we're going to factor these trinomials, and we're going to only focus on trinomials of the form 1x squared plus bx plus c. In other words, where the coefficient of the x squared term is 1. And so, for example, we might focus on factoring x squared minus 15x plus 56, or x squared plus 21x minus 100. And we won't focus on these just yet. You can see here on these two examples the coefficient of the squared term is not 1. It's a number other than 1. So we're going to focus on, again, only on trinomials where the coefficient of the squared term is simply 1. Okay? Now, there's two methods that we're going to learn here. One is the trial and error method, and one is the grouping method. I'll teach you the trial and error method first, and then I'll teach the grouping method. Okay? So first of all, let's look at the trial and error, and we'll look at it. Look at a particular example here. Okay, so let's say we wanted to factor x squared minus 15x plus 56. Now, what I want you to do, I want you to think in terms of the FOIL method, but I want you to think backwards. I want you to think we need two binomials. We need two binomials here. And if you think in terms of the FOIL method, since the first term of this trinomial is x squared, the only possible factors of x squared are x and x, or 1x and 1x. So notice that the first terms of my trinomials are going, my binomials here are going to be x. Now the other thing I want you to think in terms of is look at the last term of the trinomial, 56. Well, when you FOIL, remember the product of the last terms have to give you that 56. So these last terms have to be factors whose product is 56. Now then, but what about the middle term? Okay, so we've determined here that the first terms have to be factors of x squared, and that the last terms have to be factors of 56. Okay, so what about the middle term? That's how we determine which factors of 56 we're going to use. If you'll remember, this middle term minus 15x, it comes from taking the inner product and outer product and adding them together. Now, since the first terms are only going to be x in these examples, then when you multiply the negative 8 times x and the negative 7 times x and add them together, it's basically just going to give you what negative 8 plus negative 7 would be as far as the coefficient. So that's why it makes this particular type of trial and error easier rather than if the coefficient of the trinomial was a number other than 1. So if we had a number other than 1 here for x squared, it would be more difficult. But when the coefficient is just 1, in other words, if we just have x squared, it makes this easier. And here's what you have to do. Again, this only works if the coefficient of x squared is 1. So here's what you look for. You have to find two numbers whose product is this third term, 56, and whose sum is the coefficient of the middle term, negative 15. So when you sit there and think about the factors of 56, like the factors are positive 8 and positive 7. Of course, 8 plus 7 equals positive 15. You could also think of factors like 2 and 28, or 4 and 14, or negative 4, negative 14, negative 2, negative 28, and so forth. But it's pretty easy to figure out that if you use negative 8 and negative 7, they multiply together to give 56, and negative 8 plus negative 7 add together to give negative 15. So this must factor into x minus 8 and x minus 7. And again, always check these by the FOIL method. Again, if you just multiply x times x, you get x squared. X times minus 7 is minus 7x. Minus 8 times x is minus 8x. And then minus 7x minus 8x is minus 15x. And then minus 8 times minus 7 is 56. Okay, so I won't spend as much time explaining on the next examples, but basically, let me just get to the point on this one. So on this one, again, the coefficient of x squared is 1, and notice that the last term is negative 100. So our factors that we use have to include numbers who add together, that multiply together to give negative 100. So, it could be something like 10 and negative 10, or negative 4 and 25, or something like that, because those products are negative 100. But here's the catch. We need to use factors whose product is negative 100, but whose sum is positive 21. Okay, so I'm going to choose, if you look long and hard, you'll find that negative 4 times 25 equals negative 100, and negative 4 plus 25 is 21. So therefore, I can rewrite this, or factor this, as x minus 4 and x plus 25. So those would be the factors. Again, the negative 4 times 25 is negative 100, and then the negative 4 plus 25 is 21. And if you check this by FOIL, you'll see that if you multiply this back together, it does equal the trinomial we started with. Okay, let's take a look at a couple more. Here we have a squared plus 25a plus 156. Now, you have to maybe write down on scratch paper the different factors of 156. So I don't know what the different factors are right off the top of my head, but I do know that a pair of factors that multiply together to give 156 are 13 and 12, and that the sum of 13 and 12 is equal to 25. So if you look at the factors long enough, you can finally pick that the factors of this is a plus 13 and a plus 12, because 13 times 12 is 156, and then 13 plus 12 is 25, the coefficient of the middle term. And then here's another one. Here we need two factors whose product is negative 96y squared, and whose sum is going to give negative 10. So I chose negative 16 and positive 6, because negative 16 times 6 is negative 96, and negative 16 plus 6 gives me negative 10. Now, I also have to include the y, because this is not just a constant here, this is a constant with a variable. So I've also got to have the y in each case, so that when I multiply these two together, I get negative 96y squared. So now you can check this with the FOIL again. X times x is x squared. X times 6y is 6xy. Negative 16y times x is negative 16xy. And 6xy minus 16xy gives negative 10xy. And then negative 16y times 6y is negative 96y squared. And so here's a couple more. On this one, y squared minus 25, that actually would factor into y plus 5 and y minus 5, because 5 and negative 5 would multiply together to give negative 25, and then 5 plus negative 5 yields 0. See, notice there's no b term here, so the coefficient of the b term would be 0. So that would be y plus 5 and y minus 5. Another one, m squared minus 18 plus, m squared minus 8x plus 16. Well, that's going to factor into m minus 4 and m minus 4, because negative 4 times negative 4 is 16, and then negative 4 plus negative 4 is negative 8. And so that's what you have there. Now, that's as far as I'm going to go on this video. I'm actually going to break this video up into two parts. And in the next section, I'll show you how to do these same problems using the grouping method. You don't really need the grouping method here, but I'll go ahead and show you anyway. You really need the grouping method when we're doing more complicated, factoring more complicated trinomials. But I'll start you with the grouping method on some simple examples in the next video.